Most reps completely underestimate how powerful cold email can be, not because they're lazy, but because no one ever showed them how to actually do it the right way. I've spent over 7 years in enterprise software sales at 2 market-leading tech companies. I went from SDR to manager to enterprise account executive, and I've coached thousands of reps along the way who went from 0 replies over email to booking meetings every single week using these frameworks. So in this video, I'm going to give you what actually works in the field today, real templates and the reply boosting tactics that top reps are using in a system you can run for yourself on autopilot. So let's get into it. All right, so why is cold email so powerful? Most people truly don't understand how powerful it is, and these are the main points that I call the cold email advantage. Number one being that cold email prospecting is by far the quickest path to getting results if you are just starting out. When I was a manager, my teams always ramped up by far the quickest, and you know why? It's because I didn't joke around with cold email. I know other methods like cold calling, it takes some time to get your reps in, feel comfortable and confident with it. With cold email, if you have a good message that is targeted for the right personas and you get that message in the hands of enough of the right people, you will get replies and you will start to book meetings. So it's the first thing you can immediately do and implement to start getting results. Next, email is very scalable. I'm going to show you just how scalable in a second. Slight improvements in any of your key inputs like open rates, reply rates, book rates, they make a massive difference. 3, it's easy to systematize without it being a huge time commitment. To make a bunch of cold calls, it takes a lot of time. It's easy to get a lot of emails out the door to the right people if you know what areas to systematize and automate. So I'm going to show you that. And then you can craft your message and tone with precision. That's to my point earlier that even if you're not confident yet on the phones, tonality is so important. With email, you can take time to craft it the right way. If they have objections, you can take the time to respond to it. You don't have to respond on the fly. So these 4 together are some of the biggest advantages to cold email. And when it comes to cold email, the reason it's so powerful is because slight improvements make a massive difference. So in this top example is a rep who is sending 150 emails, and we'll call it a week. They had a 4% response rate, about 1 out of 25 people responding to them. Of those people who responded, 1 out of 5 took them up on the meeting, and that yielded an expected 1.2 meetings per week. Now, if we just do some very simple things to improve our daily workflow to be a little more efficient, which is not hard at all, and get to 250 emails per day, that's basically an extra 20 emails per day if you're doing this weekly. You get that response rate from 4%, 1 out of 25, to 1 out of 20, and that meeting conversion rate to a very slight improvement of 20% to 22%. Look what the expected value in terms of meetings that you'll get every week if you're just able to improve these key inputs by the slightest of margins. So I tell people this is why you should obsess over the small details when it comes to email prospecting. Don't just take the first template that's given to you and just be like, all right, that's what I'm going to use for the next 3 months. You'll see, I like to really drill in on the details to the point where you might think I'm psychotic, but it's because I know one word or one passive phrase can be the difference of going from 1.2 meetings per week to 2.75 meetings per week. Small improvements equal a huge impact on your results. So we're going to show some examples here now where we're going to reverse engineer some outcomes. So on the top line, we have a reply rate of about 3%. 1 out of 33 people are responding to our emails on average. And of those people who respond, 1 out of 10 take us up on a meeting. So how many, if we're trying to book 1 meeting a week, 3 meetings per week, or 5 meetings per week, how many emails do we need to send on average to back into that result? So for 1 meeting a week, if these are our inputs, it's going to take about 333 emails per week. It's a lot, but it's doable. What about 3? If we want 3 meetings per week from email? Well, now that jumps up to 1,000 with these inputs. What if we want 5? What if we want to crush it on email? That's going to take about 1667 emails per week. Now, let's say we start to really improve our structure of our emails. We improve our subject lines, the language in them. We're more assumptive. I'm going to go into all this. And we simply get this reply rate from 3% to 4, and we get our book rate up from 10% to 15%. Well, now to book 1 meeting a week, we only need about 166 emails. To book 3, it's about 1,000 to 500. And to book 5, we need about 833. That's a lot, but you can see just by improving these inputs so slightly, we've basically doubled our efficiency when it comes to email. So what I want to go into next is how we can start to analyze these emails and break down how to actually get more responses, because in order to book a meeting, we need a response. And the worst feeling over email is when you're spending hours sending out emails every week and it's just a ghost town. No one's responding to you. I would rather get told no 30 times a week than not hear anything at all from prospects. So how to actually get more responses, and it's a lot simpler than you think. So take a pause here. What is the key input to booking email meetings? If you're trying to book meetings over email, what is the key input? The answer is responses. In order to book a meeting over email, you first need someone to respond to that email. Therefore, we should be gearing our email structure to give us a chance at getting more responses. So the way to do this, your language and tone should seek to induce a response, specifically a response around your request to meet. That's what gives us a chance at booking the meeting, not asking for their thoughts. More responses equals more chances to book meetings. It sounds very simple, but a lot of people aren't taught to do this in practice. A response is a shot on net, a chance at booking the meeting. It gets you on the playing field in a non-zero probability to book the meeting. If they respond, you have a chance at booking the meeting. We will never get the majority of people to respond to meetings. It's not like we're expecting 90% of our people to respond to our emails all of a sudden, or even close to that. But if you go from a 2% reply rate, 1 out of 50 people responding, to 1 out of 25, then you just doubled the amount of meetings you were booking, all else equal. So the next step is, how can we start to improve these email templates to improve our odds slightly that our message lands with the prospect and that they actually respond to our email? And this is the way I look at it. This is my vision for how cold email and the cold email blueprint I follow is supposed to work. So everything we're doing with the emails, the follow-ups we craft, the timing of it all, the cadences, is geared around getting us as many of these as possible, as many responses as we can, because once we get a response, then they enter the funnel and there's only 3 possible outcomes. Either the response is, sure, I'm free on Friday, feel free to shoot me over an invite, in which case send a strong agenda and book the meeting, but it's pretty self-explanatory. If they give you a hard no, which is like, you're a scammer, take me off your list, never contact me again, just make a note and move on. You can try and respond to that, but it's pretty much a Hail Mary at that point. You kind of just want to make a note and move on. Otherwise, we want to be prepared for the only other outcome, which is some form of objection or a clarifying question. And in which case, you want to be prepared and have an objection response bank, which I'm going to show you how to create later in this video, to all of the most common objections, so that as you receive them, you have a base template to copy, paste, and get you 80-90% of the way there, rather than just having to come up with these responses on the fly. And the formula for that, which we'll cover, is to acknowledge their concern and tell them it makes sense to meet anyway. So how to get more prospects to respond so that they actually enter this funnel is 3 key ways. 1, you want to concisely answer 3 questions in your email. Tell them who you are, tell them why you were important/relevant to them, which is essentially what priorities and challenges you solve and how you solve them at a high level, ones that are relevant to this persona you're reaching out to. And then state, don't ask, that you're looking to get aligned or you're looking to set up some time moving forward. Don't ask if this is worth a chat or if this is interesting to them. I don't even want to imply that. I'm telling them because of who I am, because of how relevant I am to you, and that I'm positioning myself as a valuable resource going forward, I'm looking to set up some time. So in conjunction with that is fix your language. So less is usually more. You don't want to make your emails too short, but if you can deliver your message in the same way, but reduce a few words or reduce a sentence or two, then you should do it. But you don't want to cut too much so that they don't actually know what the email is about. You want to replace optional sounding language with stronger, more assumptive language wherever possible. We're going to cover lots of examples of that. And then imply that a meeting will be taking place rather than asking if they're open to it, if they have time, or if they're interested. So the reason most emails don't get replies is because they break these rules. 1, they use passive or optional sounding language that lacks conviction and makes the prospect's response feel optional, like it's up to them whether they have to respond or not. 2 is that there's soft or non-existent CTAs, calls to action, that don't drive responses. So either it's, is this worth a chat? Is this worth your time? Or it's just thoughts where you're not even asking for a meeting. And then poor persona targeting, where the messaging is too broad and has no clear value or relevance to the prospect. So it might sound like a lot, but these fixes are actually easy in practice. And I'm going to show you a real example here. So on the left, we have an initial template that is very representative of what I see reps using across the sales landscape. So I'll just read it out loud, and I've highlighted in red the areas that set off alarm bells in my head that are either passive language, weak calls to action, or poor persona targeting. So I'll read it and then break it down. Hi, blank. I hope you're doing well and having a great week so far. I'm part of the customer experience solutions team here at your company, and we often work with teams like yours on areas such as operations, engagement, and digital transformation initiatives. I wanted to reach out and see if it might make sense to have a brief conversation next week to explore if there's potential alignment or ways we could possibly support some of your current efforts. Let me know if you'd be open to a quick chat, and I'd be happy to work around your schedule. Warmest regards, Connor. So these are in red are the areas that one by one aren't going to kill your email, but remember that those numbers I was showing you at the beginning of the video, how small improvements lead to mega differences. So I like to break this down, and just a lot of it's just eliminating fluff. So I hope you're doing well and having a great week so far. It doesn't move the email forward. I think you can just take that out. You sound like a lot of sales reps. You sound kind of schmoozy when you do it, even if your intent is not to do that. It's actually to be polite. I recommend taking blank sentences out like this. I wanted to reach out and see if it might make sense. That's passive or optional sounding. If there's potential alignment, you're implying that there might not be alignment. Possibly support some of your current initiatives. That's passive and optional sounding. Let me know if you'd be open to a quick chat, and I'd be happy to work around your schedule. It's just too customer service representative sounding, and not like you're positioning yourself as a valuable consultative resource for them going forward. Even warmest regards, I'll show you what I like to use instead. But all in all, these things together will kill your email. And this is the type of email you could send out 500 times in a week. And most people, you probably may not get any responses, because this just sounds optional. Like if you got this and read this, you wouldn't feel obligated to respond to it. So here's how you can take the same template, and just by making small tweaks, just you tell me, tell me how the tone of this email sounds compared to this one. So in this one, my name's Connor Murray, and I'm part of the CX Solutions team responsible for supporting retail brands like XYZ Company on priorities related to store performance insights and reporting automation across locations. We partner with operations leaders that are aiming to increase accountability across store teams, surface key performance trends faster, and free up time by eliminating manual coordination between stores and systems. I'm looking to set aside 15 to 20 minutes to introduce our team and get aligned with your initiatives heading into Q3. How does Wednesday or Thursday morning work for a phone/Zoom call? Thanks in advance, should say Connor. So in this one, the areas I put in green are I basically kept the same email template, but I replaced a lot of the passive language, like if you're open to a quick chat, if it might make sense. A lot of it I just straight up cut out. You didn't even need to replace it with anything. But here, I'm looking to set, as opposed to if it might make sense or if you're open to it. Get aligned with your initiative. It sounds stronger than possibly support some of your current efforts. How does Wednesday or Thursday morning work, as opposed to let me know if you'd be open to. Even up here, I was a lot more specific to a particular persona. Here, this is a bit too broad, in my opinion. Operations, engagement, digital transformation initiatives. Like, what title is this for? This could be for anyone. Here, I made it specific to an actual industry, retail. So if I had a list of people who worked in retail, and it's very clearly targeted towards someone who's an operations leader, like an operations director or VP of operations. So it's more persona specific. It's got a stronger call to action geared towards meeting. I'm implying that this meeting will be happening, not asking if it would be worth their time. And I'm using to support that stronger, more assumptive language. So to help with this, I created a quick cheat sheet on passive language versus assumptive language, because just by not even doing anything else I'm going to cover the rest of this video, if you just take your existing templates and either remove entirely or replace some of this passive language, or what I call the buzzword, buzz phrase checklist, with stronger, more assumptive language, all else equal, you'll start to see your reply rates jump by a lot. So things like, I was hoping to, I'd love to, if you're interested, when you may have time, do you possibly have time? or buzz phrases. I don't like to call myself an educational resource. I don't want to imply that I don't know about their role and it's not their job to teach me. No one wants a high-level overview. Sharing broad industry statistics, 42% of companies in retail say this, that they could be improving their marketing ROI. Whatever it is, it's too buzzy. It sounds like you're copying and pasting. Excessive language like ever-changing landscape during these transformative times. A lot of this you just want to cut out because it sounds markety, it sounds salesy, and it sounds passive and optional, and you want to replace it with, I'm looking to set some time this week. Let's set some time this week. Either way, I'm looking to. Let me know if either of those dates work. You want to be directing a call to action towards your meeting, and you want responses, either yes, no, or objections to your request to meet. So the TLDR on how to get more responses over email is 1, all else equal, send more emails. More emails. Don't let anyone tell you volume is not important. You should be doing both. You should have your list of strategic, more targeted accounts that you're being more thoughtful with, and you should have your high volume persona-based targeting list where you're moving high quality at scale. So send more emails. Send more emails with relevant and valuable messaging so that when they read it, it increases the odds that they find value in it and therefore reply. 3, send more emails with an assumptive tone and strong calls to actions to meet. Send these emails at times of day where response rates are higher. We'll talk more about that later in scheduling, but generally it's early morning, about 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. in their time zone before their day's really gotten going with meetings. You want to follow up on these emails consistently and assumptively. We're going to cover that later as well. And then implement a repeatable and simple process so that you can do this at scale consistently. So I know it's demoralizing when you're not getting responses, but just use first principles and break it down what it actually takes to get more replies. And that is a quality message plus an increase in volume plus being consistent with those two things equals more responses and therefore more meetings booked. And don't take it from me, take it from Albert. You can look this one up. It was one of the last things he said, one of the biggest realizations he ever made, right up there with E equals MC squared. Quality, quantity, consistently. Don't overcomplicate it. So now let's get into the actual email templates. Beyond just quick fixes to existing ones, how can we structure these from the bottom up to be assumptive and to give ourselves better chances at replies? And the overall framework I use, I like to call it assumptive alignment. So here's what it looks like. These are not exact words. As you'll see, here's 2 examples. They look different. They have a similar look and feel, but the words are different. There's a million infinite ways you can go about this, but I believe you want to follow, if you're looking to start with a base framework that's easy, simple, repeatable, and will get you more replies, it's proven to work at scale. You want to have a 3-body paragraph email that answers those 3 questions I was talking about earlier. Who you are, why you're reaching out, and what you want. So I'll read an example here. Good morning, John. My name's Connor Murray, and I'm part of the financial applications team here at Capital Site, company I made up. We work with finance teams in manufacturing to accelerate reporting, improve audit readiness, and eliminate manual reconciliation work. Specifically, we focus on priorities related to financial accuracy, compliance, and reducing repetitive work. We do this by automating close processes, centralizing financial documentation, and providing audit trails across systems and departments. I'm looking to take some time to get acquainted and understand how we can support the priorities you are most focused on this year. What does your schedule look like next week? Looking forward to it, Connor. So in its simplest form, the who you are is simply your name, the team you're part of, and maybe making it industry specific, but you want to talk high level, some things. What we're really trying to do here, these prospects are scanning these emails. They're not always reading them line by line logically like we are when we write them out. They're scanning and they're like, accelerate reporting, improve. Oh yeah, we did have a tough audit recently. They're just scanning for stuff that's relevant or not relevant to them. So we want to give some high level priorities. This is who we are. The why we're reaching out is giving them more specifics into how we accomplish these priorities or solve these challenges, and then how we solve them at a high level. You don't want to go into too much detail because you're not going to sell them over a cold email, and going into the weeds too much actually just backfires on emails. So the why you're calling, what priorities again, but a little more detail and how you solve them, and then assumptively tell them what you want. If you start doing this and you get these and you really work on the why and the personas you're reaching out to, you make them more industry specific, you will start getting more replies, especially when you pair it with the follow-ups we're going to cover a bit as well. But you can make any adjustments you want. I just recommend you start by using this framework because I've seen it work across SMB, mid-market, upmarket, in a variety of different industries and verticals. So in here, it's similar. I talk about this is a different persona, a marketing persona. I'm part of the marketing applications team. Given your role, I'm looking to introduce and get aligned, yada, yada. My team works with organizations on priorities related to campaign execution, lead conversion, and marketing workflow automation. We do this by centralizing campaign approvals, automating repetitive tasks, and integrating documentation across creative and compliance workflows. And then a little different CTA here, but it's still do any of the following dates work for an introductory discussion. You can list a few dates. You can add time windows if you want. Thanks in advance, Connor. So we made some slight adjustments here, but they both generally follow the same who, why, what framework. Both of them are assumptive and imply this meeting will be happen. This is how you can take a repeatable structure and apply it to all your different personas and all the different verticals and industries you support. Another way to take this a step further is to create what I call persona level templates. So what I mean by persona levels is if you reach out to people in IT, not or finance or HR, really any industry, it's not all people have the same goals, priorities, challenges they face, etc. I usually like to break them into persona levels 1, 2, and 3, or you can do above the line, which is essentially management, and above or below the line, which are end users. Either way is fine in my opinion. But to show you level 1, 2, 3, level 1 are essentially end users and individual contributors. These people are on the ground floor. They're not usually decision makers. They don't have control over budget or decisions. And these people are generally focused on saving time, simplifying tasks to hit their goals, and reducing friction. So some examples, you and me, if you're watching this, we're both level 1 end users. If you're an SDR, if you're an AE, we don't control what sales tools get bought in our organization generally. We're not metriced on profitability or the strategic direction of the business or anything like that. We're just focused on, man, it takes me too long to get lists ready. It's too hard. It takes me 4 hours and the data's not accurate. It takes me too long to get things done in general. Like, that's what we care about, and that's the type of messaging that's more likely to resonate with us if we were to be prospected into. Level 2 are team leads, managers, decision influencers. They're generally at the operations level. So these are the types of people who manage the end users and own team KPIs. So your manager is probably a level 2. Directors, like a director of business development, a fleet ops manager, a director of IT. These are people who generally fall in the level 2 category, and they're most focused on improving efficiency, process efficiency as well, and overall performance and the KPIs that the level 1 people, are tracked on. So we want to make our messaging tailored to that if we can. And then level 3 are the executives and budget holders. These are essentially the final decision makers, generally vice presidents and above, C-suite, department heads, and their role, or they're the people who own budgets in the strategic direction. They are focused on ROI, risk reduction, alignment with business goals. So yes, all things equal, all 3 people care about a lot of the same stuff. Like, yeah, the people at level 1, like, I want my company to do well and I want revenue to grow, but it doesn't really impact me personally. And like level 3, yeah, all things equal, they want you to not spend 2 hours building lists and things like, they want you guys to save time and your tasks to be simple, but that's not always their direct concern. Like, if it's taking us a long time to do stuff, but the business is doing great and we're hitting on objectives and there's lower risk, etc., they're not really, that's not a big pain point for them. So here's some examples of how you can take a similar template. In this case, I'm going to be at a company one I made up called Fleet Core, as if I was reaching out to a level 1 fleet dispatcher, a level 2 fleet ops manager who manages this team, and then a chief operating officer, and how I can take a very similar who, why, what assumptive template, but I highlighted in orange what I changed based on what level persona they're at. So I won't read them all out loud, but in this one, I talked about saving hours on paperwork, reducing back and forth with drivers, and getting clear visibility into who's where and when. With the level 2, their manager, I talked about reducing driver admin time, more KPI and process specific now, and increasing visibility across teams by automating reporting tied to fleet and driver activity. And then level 3 to a chief operating officer, I talked about increasing accountability across field teams. That's lowering risk reduction, surfacing performance insights that drive better decisions. That's their whole job, and create a more scalable oversight across regions, making sure that this is in alignment with their overall business goals and objectives. So I don't recommend, you don't need to start here, but this is an aspirational goal of where you want to get to and how you can continue to fine tune a lot of these email templates that you're building out for your top personas in your top industries. So now I want to get into follow-ups and why they are so crucial. We can spend all the time in the world creating the best email that was ever written, but if we don't have the proper follow-up cadence in place, it is largely worthless. So when implementing a follow-up strategy that gets replies, it's first important to just understand why we follow up. I think a lot of people get it, but they don't truly get it. Our follow-ups reinforce the value of our initial outreach, that initial email we sent them. It creates an expectation that the meeting will happen and prove that a real person, not an automated system, is personally reaching out to them with a specific purpose in mind. 70 to 80%, this is why it's so important, of meetings over email come from follow-ups, not the first message. The first message is incredibly important, but don't expect that to be the one that generates all of the replies, because a lot of people are so conditioned because their email inboxes are so flooded. It's generally a lot of automated emails or salespeople with not a valuable message and a good reason for reaching out. They have learned to ignore that first email, and it's the serious people that are the ones that follow up consistently, earlier and often, where they're like, oh, this is a real person, I should go read their initial email more closely, and then they decide whether they want to reply or not. So essentially, the first email is the hook. You should send that expecting them to ignore it, and that it's going to be one of your follow-ups that goes and gets them to read it more closely, and then all that work we put in, that's where it becomes worth it. So why prospects may not reply right away? There's many reasons. They're either busy, like they're in the middle of their workday, they're distracted, something's going on in their personal life, they forget to respond a lot of times. I've had that happen where I was about to respond to an email, I get a call from my boss or something, someone taps me on the shoulder, and then 10 minutes goes by and I'm like, what was I doing? And then I go back to my normal day. So, or they're waiting for internal approval. This is a slept on one where a lot of times that people are like, this sounds interesting, but should I be the one meeting with this? And if you have software that tracks opens, you can tell this is happening a lot of times. When you send an email to someone and you see it's been opened by like 8 people, what's likely happened is they forwarded it to their boss or their boss's boss and said, hey, this sounds interesting, or like, should I be meeting with this person? Do you want to join? And then they don't get a reply back. And if you don't follow up, they're not going to follow up on that. And then they aren't yet convinced you're a real person reaching out, to my point. A lot of people are just conditioned to assume the emails they're receiving are automated sales blasts that aren't actually for them personally, and they don't want to be the sucker that ends up taking a meeting. So guiding principles for following up: condense the timeline, hit them hard, and then move on. So what I mean by that is send follow-ups after your initial email. Each follow-up should come within 24 to 48 hours after the initial email, ideally in the morning, in that time frame of 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., their time zone. If you miss it, don't worry about it. Still send it anyway. It's just the reply rates drop a little bit. But any longer than that, and your whole sense of urgency and assumptiveness fades. Like, I get emails all the time where I get the initial email on Monday, a follow-up comes Friday, a follow-up comes the Friday after that, and it's just so obvious this isn't urgent, and they're just I'm on an automated cadence or just some sort of sequence in HubSpot, and I'm like, all right, if I don't respond to a couple more, they'll just go away. So what I want to do is hit them hard, hit them often, and move on. Ideally, I like to do 4 or 5 touch points over email in a 7 to 10 day span. So it's basically an initial email and then a follow-up every other day until you get to about 4 follow-ups, and that'll end up being 5 touch points in about 10 days. And then you rinse and repeat. Here's where I differ from a lot of training, is that at that point, they know you're there, and you're better on just moving on to fresh lists that you haven't contacted yet, rather than dragging out these complex, hard to scale 15 touch point cadences, because the data shows after about the 4th follow-up, really even the 3rd, the reply rates drop dramatically. So rather than spending over the course of a month, I don't know, dozens of hours sending emails that are 5 touch points and beyond, you should probably just move on to fresh lists that are more likely to respond. And then what I tell people is you can circle back on lists way quicker and way more frequently than you think with a very similar, if not the same, message. You really only need to wait 4 weeks on the low end. If you can, wait 6 to 8 weeks, and you can just do that on autopilot. Response rates don't drop because, again, a lot of times it's just a timing thing. They're not, maybe the priorities you were talking about weren't relevant, but then you talk about automating or improving a lot of audit compliance issues, and they just had some sort of audit issue. And now all of a sudden they're like, you know what? I am interested in taking a meeting. Would be worth 15 minutes of my time to learn more about this. So that's the way I look at it. And here's some real examples of the way I view follow-ups. So I send one of those initial emails that we covered earlier, and 3 follow-ups, the general vibe I'm going for lack of a better word, is follow-up 1. I generally give them the benefit of the doubt because things get busy, people forget to respond, it's okay. So something like, hi blank, just confirming you caught my previous note. Does this week work for you, or do either of those dates work? I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't make the resources I have available to you. That line's optional, but essentially it's just like, hey, just want to make sure you saw my note. It's very simple. It's what we don't want to do is write these brand new emails that totally disregard the fact that we already sent them an email. We want to do the first email right, make it relevant. That's the one we want them to be reading. And then all of the follow-ups should just be geared towards getting a response to your initial email where you requested to meet. So the first one, give them the benefit of the doubt. There's lots of ways to go about this. That's just an example. Follow-up 2 is my favorite day. You can show a little professional, what I call professional dissatisfaction. You're not being disrespectful, but you're basically, again, the vibe of the email is like, hey, I sent you a first note. I sent you a benefit of the doubt email. I know you're there. I know you're seeing this. I'd just like a response. Either way, it can be a yes or no, but I am a real person reaching out to you. So it can be as simple as, please give me your thoughts on this when you have a moment. You don't even have to put when you have a moment. You can just say, please give me your thoughts on this. I've booked more meetings and got more responses off that line alone than anything else I could teach you on this channel. Just please give me your thoughts on this. They see it in the subject preview of their email and they're like, wait, what? And then they scroll down and read your email very carefully. And a lot of times you got to be prepared. On the positive side, you get a lot of apologies, frankly, where they're like, oh, sorry, the week got away from me. So sorry. Thank you for your persistence. That's one I get a lot. And then they book the meeting. On the other side, you'll get, my thoughts are taking me off your list to never contact me again. So, but you just got to laugh it off. What we want is responses, because another value of this is you get a lot of middle ground responses that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten if you didn't show a little professional dissatisfaction, where they tell you, hey, now's not the right time, or I'm not the right person, but now you at least have a chance to overcome that. And then 3, this one I'm always tweaking with, because honestly, most responses come by the first 2, is an assumptive breakup. So it can sound something like, hi blank, just trying to plan the next couple weeks out and would really like to close the loop either way. Let me know if it makes sense to revisit this conversation at a later date. Happy to connect in August if it's a better time. Kindly, Connor. So with follow-up 2, you really left it all out there. You tried to show a little professional dissatisfaction. Now you're kind of like, all right, you're almost trying to guilt them a little bit, like, all right, if you can't even give me a response, like, I'd like to close the loop, but like, we'll just revisit this. You're almost saying, I'm not going away. You're still being assumptive, but you're like, all right, we'll just do this another time. And you give off a total, this is one of the only times where I think it's okay to be a little passive, because you really left it all out there with the professional dissatisfaction email. So you can even just say, kindly, Connor. And I've picked off some meetings on this one, and because it's copy and pastable, it's easy to send out. So I do it, but most responses come within the first 2 from my experience. So the next important topic is around list creation and lead segmentation. You might have already been wondering earlier, I see the vision in those email templates, but how do you get all those lists ready? How do you get them organized by title, by industry, by geography, whatever you want to do? Well, it's through a process that I call coiling the spring, which is everything that happens before you start sending emails. So the technical definition, I might change this in the future, but this is what I'm working with now, of coiling the spring. And what I mean is you're essentially front loading all of your prep work. So you're building your targeted lists, writing your tailored email templates and scripts in advance, so that when it comes time to actually execute and you sit down and it's 8 a.m., you start your day, you can focus purely on high quality outreach without friction, hesitation, or wasted time. That's the killer for so many reps. And I used to make this mistake, is I would sit down at 8 a.m. and I'd be like, who am I going to target today? Add people to lists, and they all had different titles and different industries, and I was typing emails one by one. And that's why for a while I thought email was a waste of time, because I'd spend 20 minutes on an email, not get a response, and I'd be like, I don't have time for this. I could have made 15 dials in that same time frame. I'm just going to focus on calls. But it's because I wasn't taught how to actually coil the spring and do a lot of the work that goes into emailing up front. I almost compare it to meal prep for sales reps, which I'll talk about in a sec. But how to get started? You first start at a high level. You don't need to boil the ocean. Start with your top ICPs, ideal customer profiles, and buying triggers. What departments do you have the best value prop in? What are the job titles that are best to meet with? What are your top industries you go after? Geography, it could be employee count, whatever your solution, like whoever you look at and you're like, that is my bread and butter, those are the prospects I look for, get those people onto organized lists up front. Then you want to strategically create lists with one or more of these buying triggers if you can, like job type, like CFOs in retail, that's a list. CFOs in manufacturing, CFOs in financial services, or if geography is relevant, CFOs in retail in Texas or whatever. And then you create cold call scripts and email. This works for cold calling too, but create email templates as well that are targeted for each of those lists. And that's what I'm going to show you next. The reason this is so important is because otherwise these tasks will cause you daily friction, slow you down, and kill your productivity. You have two choices. You can either do this throughout the day, every single day, or you can bite the bullet, do it all up front, take a day or two, because it'll probably take you 15, 20 hours of work. That's not a hard number. It could be less, it could be more, but it's going to take you a lot more than that and kill your productivity if you're trying to do all of this on a daily basis. This way, when you sit down, you know what you're doing each day rather than having to come up with what to do. That is the killer. You can set the foundation for weeks or months at a time if you do this correctly. And again, I compare this to meal prep for sales reps. If you've ever followed a workout routine and you're trying to follow a nutrition plan, most people think it's more efficient to spend 4 hours on a Sunday or whatever, going to the grocery store, getting all the ingredients, the food you need, making it, cooking it, boxing it up in all the right proportions so that the rest of the week you don't need to think about food or meal prep or any of that. You can just execute, eat what's there, execute, eat what's there. And it's the same thing in sales, where if you have these lists and the templates ready to go, and the good thing about this is lists don't go bad like food does. It's not something you need to do every week. So if you just do it all up front, you will have enough lists and enough templates where you will always have something to do. You'll never not have things to do. So my recommended order of operations is to start at the departmental level. If you sell a sales and marketing automation platform, start with templates for sales, start with templates for marketing, and start with templates for IT probably, because IT probably needs to get involved in some of those decisions. Then move on to department plus industry. So create sales templates for financial services, sales templates for retail, etc. Same thing for marketing, same thing for IT. And then move on to individual titles. So not just sales templates for financial services, but VPs of sales versus directors of business development, and doing that for each of your departments and each of your industries. And then the final form, you don't have to start here, to create level 1, 2, 3 personas that we covered earlier for all of this, and messaging that's slightly targeted based on the priorities and challenges that are important to the specific personas in that department and in industry. So to break this down even more, another look at it is focus on your ICP and your top buying triggers, whether it's job title, department, industry, market segment, employee count. Create persona-driven segments. These are the lists you're going to be creating. So you should have a list of directors of IT and manufacturing in my territory, financial analysts that work in banking in my territory, HR leadership, so that just could be VPs of HR and above, at orgs that have over 1,000 employees, if that's relevant to you, or sales leaders at orgs that are in between 5 million and 25 million in ARR, if that's relevant to you. And the only 3 capabilities you need to do this are: 1, the ability to filter leads by desired criteria. So you have a database of contacts where you can filter by VPs of sales, and then filter down by software, and then filter down by 5 million to 25 million in revenue. You need that ability to filter down from 10,000 prospects to the 125 that fit the exact criteria you're looking for on a list. Then once you have those people filtered, you need the ability, it shouldn't be a super manual process where you're importing and exporting and creating spreadsheets. You should just be able to click a button and add them to a list. That's it. It should take 5 seconds once you've filtered it. And then you need the ability to contact them one by one via the phone, email once they're on those lists. So to give you an understanding of what this actually looks like rather than talking about it, this is what a lot of lists look like in terms of SDRs come in, they add a bunch of random contacts to lists. I used to do this, so I made the same mistakes where you'd have Sarah Kim, VP of Ops at Greenleaf Farms, Daniel Ruiz, IT director at a bank, and then we have a cosmetics company, procurement, supply chain, CFO. You're all over the place. You have to, it's too hard. You have to go one by one. You have to rewire your brain, create a different template for all of them. So what you want to do instead is, here is a list of VPs of finance that specifically work at banks. Now, I don't need to know anything else about all these people who have different names. They all work for different companies, but I do know they share the same job title and they all work at banks. Therefore, I can create one email template that's targeted for VPs of finance in the banking industry in particular, and be confident that it'll be a highly relevant email template for most of the contacts on this list. This is what I mean by high volume at scale. Yes, you're probably losing a little quality at the margin by not spending 10 minutes of research and perfectly tailoring and personalizing the template for each one, but that takes too long. You want to have both buckets. This is your high quality at scale bucket, and then you can have your particular accounts, particular leads, where you're slowing down and being a little more thoughtful with, but you need to be doing both, and this is how you do it. So I want to show you an example of how you can take a general template targeted to a specific title, and just by tweaking a few things, keeping the same structure, we can now have a template ready that's targeted for a list of that same title, but in a particular industry. In the first one, it follows the same who, why, what structure. I won't read out the entire thing again, but in this one, high level, but still a good template that will book meetings. Heavy manual reporting, fragmented spreadsheets, and time-consuming reconciliation processes. Our focus is on automating financial data consolidation and providing actual real-time visibility into key metrics, giving finance teams the ability to close a lot faster and deliver far more reliable reporting for decision-making. Now, we can take the same structure. They look the same. If you don't even read them yet, they're just visually look the same. But in this one, I replaced a lot of what was more general here with manual month-end consolidation across multiple store systems. This will increase the likelihood in their head. They're like, oh, this is meant for me. They are personally reaching out to me. Disconnected inventory and POS data and reactive margin analysis. Our focus is on automating multi-source financial reporting, delivering real-time visibility into store and regional performance, helping finance leaders close faster with more accurate audit-ready data. And you can take it a lot further than this, but this is really the part, the why piece that you really want to nail down and think hard about. Don't skimp out on it. Even here, there's some things I would immediately change. Like I wouldn't use real-time visibility. I'm just using this as an example, but this is the part you just want to, whatever you put in here is what you want. You want to increase the odds for yourself that the title, the persona, the industry they work in, it's more likely to resonate with them. So you don't need to change the entire email template to make it sound more targeted to retail. It can be as simple as things as priorities and challenges can be different in one industry versus another, even if you're selling the same solution. So that's the part you have to think hard about. And this is what I mean by coiling the spring and doing the upfront work, because if you do it right, it pays a lot of dividends moving forward. And then here's how you can do it for level 1, level 2, level 3 personas. So we'll go back to this banking example. Level 1 for a financial analyst, who, why, what, except we're going to be talking about gaining quicker visibility into job level costs, so saving time, accelerating the reporting process, automating budget versus actuals, so reducing manual processes, things like that. For level 2, a vice president of financial planning and analysis, if we had a whole list of those people, 100 of them, we're going to talk about improving forecasting accuracy and project level financial visibility, job cost reporting, budget variance analysis, forecasting automation, consolidating data and standardizing reporting across projects. And then for a CFO, we're talking about strategic finance initiatives around margin improvement, financial reporting automation, and job level cost visibility, reducing overhead tied to manual reconciliation, improving forecasting confidence. So again, same structure, but we've replaced small things about the email templates to make them a little more targeted based on the priorities and challenges each of these titles is likely to care about. So you want to make all these lists of all your top personas, all your top industries, ICPs, build out the templates in advance. And if you do this right, you won't run out of lists. You won't run out of templates. You'll continuously have things to cycle through. So that brings us to the ABAB cadence. How do we actually do this at scale, remain high quality, and increase the volume at the same time for maximum efficiency without burning out? Because a lot of the common cadences I see taught, it's too complicated. It's like email day 1, call day 2, but don't leave a voicemail. LinkedIn request day 3, call day 4 and leave a voicemail this time, then follow up with email on Friday. How are you supposed to do that for 100 contacts every single week? You can't. You can do that for maybe 5 or 10, but to do 100, I have found the easiest cadence to do this is a simple ABAB, every other day cadence. So the prerequisites to being able to implement the ABAB cadence is a lot of what I just talked about with coiling the spring. You have all of your contact lists built in advance by your specific accounts, your subsidiaries, your top titles, your personas, by department, by industry. You have the templates for all of the associated lists built, coiled in advance, slightly modified versions depending on the list, responses to your common objections saved, which I'll talk about in a second, your follow-ups pre-prepared, and then your planned ABAB cadence, which is an every other day cadence for consistency at scale. You know which lists you're going to be contacting. You have the templates ready every single day. And what I go for here is simplicity over complexity. I think simple is better wherever possible. Less is more. What's important is that you actually implement it and stay consistent. So here is what it can look like, the ABAB cadence, on an actual calendar. In a perfect world, I know that things come up, you book meetings, you have internal stuff, team meetings, but this is generally what you want to be striving for. Let's just look at email first. I know a lot of you cold call as well, so we'll touch on that in a second, but 8 to 9:30 is my email block every single day. And let's say Monday in Group A in the yellow, I pick a group of IT leaders. I have 100 of them or more on a list. I get my template that's targeted for IT leaders, and I can just be confident and send that same template, spend an hour and a half doing it, headphones in, drinking the coffee, gets the blood flowing. And if you do that and all you have to do is change the name and the name of the company, you can get a lot of emails out the door that are as high quality as you can make them. On day 2, you do the same thing, except now we choose our finance leaders list or a specific title. Do the same thing. We have the templates ready. 8 to 9:30, you can get a lot of emails out the door. On Wednesday, when you wake up, you take that first follow-up or whatever variation you create that I showed you earlier, you scroll down to Monday, you start with the first person you emailed, and you just go one by one by one. And that's how you can get a lot of follow-ups out the door. This won't even take an hour and a half. It'll take like 30 minutes. Same thing on Thursday, you scroll down to Tuesday. And I hope you can see that essentially every single day, you look at who did I email 2 days ago? Where are they in the cadence and what's the next email I need to send to them? And they're all grouped in nice, easy, organized batches. Now, if you want to take this a step further in your cold calling as well, you can cold call the list that you're emailing on the off days. So for Group A, you emailed them on Monday, you're going to call them on Tuesday. Don't worry if you can't get to every single person. That's not super important. What's important is that you just have this easy, consistent, repeatable process for yourself. So it's email Monday, call Tuesday, email Wednesday, call Thursday. A, B, A, B. And then same thing for Group B. You're going to call them on Monday, email them on Tuesday, call Wednesday, email Thursday. And I generally do this every other day cadence till I've hit them at least 4 emails and hopefully a few calls in between. And again, a 7 to 10 day span. They know you're there at that point. You've done your job and you're better off moving on. But this is easy to stay on top of. And what I put here, the next day prep, coiling the spring, again, that doesn't need to take 2.5 hours, but that's essentially where you're deciding who am I going to be contacting the next day? What lists am I going to be using, or templates, so that when you wake up on Tuesday, you know what you're doing at 8 a.m. and you're not coming up with what to do. That is the key to implementing this at scale. So what this really does is gives you a built-in structure that you can do and rely on every day. It eliminates guesswork and every day has a clear plan. It also is good for benchmarking because if you're getting good results or getting less than expected results, it's hard to tell what the reason is if your schedule's all over the place every single week on a week-by-week basis. When your days look as similar as you can make them and you're doing the same activities in similar volumes at similar times of day, you can start to get a sense of what's working and not working, and it's easier to understand why. It also gamifies the role. It was really this cadence. the SDR job felt like a grind because I was doing things randomly. I was working hard, but I was having to work extra hard to hit my numbers. This is what really gamified it. And yeah, every week didn't yield the same exact results. It ebbed and flowed. Some weeks I'd get two meetings over email. The next I'd get 8. The next I'd get 3. And the next I'd get 6. But over time, I knew the activities I needed to do at what volume, and I knew what results I could expect over the long term on average if I did it. So keep it simple. Quality messaging, as quality as you can make it by coiling the spring, plus volume, plus consistency by implementing the ABAB cadence equals success over email. So every other touch point, every other day touch points for consistency at scale. Start by picking 2 different groups of leads for the week, group A and group B, and then just take it slow. You don't need to start with like 100, 150 emails per day. Start with 20, then bump it up to 40, then bump it up to 60, and eventually you'll get the point where you can do more than 2 groups per week. You can do multiple ABAB cadences every week, and that's where the results just start to explode. And it'll almost become ridiculous, and your peers will just start asking, how are you doing this? So everything we've talked about up to this point, from the emails, the follow-ups, the cadences, the assumptive tone, everything has been geared around getting us more responses, increasing our probability that our message resonates, it's assumptive, they feel obligated to respond and therefore do. So then they enter this funnel. A yes is pretty self-explanatory what to do. A hard no is also pretty self-explanatory what to do. So now we want to be prepared for the most common objections and give ourselves the best chance of overcoming them, and ends up booking the meeting. So when it comes to handling cold email objections, my framework is to acknowledge their concern and reinforce why it still makes sense to meet anyway. It's actually very simple. I'm essentially doubling down and asking for the meeting on what my request was in the initial email and maintaining that assumptive tone. I'm not wavering. What I'm doing is I'm selling the meeting. That's really what we're selling here, a 15 to 30 minute meeting for an introductory call to position ourselves as a valuable resource to them in key business areas they care about going forward. I'm not trying to debate or overcome the objection. If they tell me they already use a different system, what is more likely to be the reason that they get on a 15 to 30 minute call with me? That I convince them somehow over an email that they might want to switch systems, or that I could be a valuable resource to them in the future, and I just want to make sure we're aligned and can support them when the time is right. I opt for sell the meeting, sell the time. And that's essentially what I'm talking about with this key thought process here. If they continue to respond with hesitancy, engage with you, that means they're interested. They just need a little more from you. That is when you can pivot to a more detailed or personalized response based on the particular objection. But option 1 is to double down and sell the time. Don't be phased. Don't start trying to sell your solution or debate their objection, because that's not going to work a high quantity of the time. So here's an example. I'm going to go more in depth in a second, but wouldn't make sense for us to meet. That example, we're already using an XYZ solution, or we're already an XYZ customer. I'm not debating it. I'm telling them, hi blank, thank you for the insight. The idea is just for us to get introduced and be a resource and point of contact here at whatever your company name is. We work with a lot of XYZ customers, so if there's ever a fit, we can move forward, but it would at least make sense to get aligned for the year. A brief 15-minute call would be greatly appreciated. Do either of those dates work for you? Thanks in advance, Connor. Is this going to work every time? No, but it's going to work a lot better than, well, see here how we helped this company improve by this much when they switched over from them to us. You're not going to convince them to take on a project like that over an email. You can convince them that you could potentially be a valuable resource to them going forward. But the key point I want to make here is how important it is to create an objection handling response bank. So the reason this is so important is you don't have to respond to every email from scratch. Again, this is a very scalable system that you can implement. So you save effective responses as good as you can make them to the most common objections, so that when you receive this type of response, you have a starting point to work with. Because while the words themselves may vary a lot of the objections are the same objection, and they can be grouped into categories and can get you 80, 90% of the way there. And then maybe you can add a little context depending on the specific title or what you know about the account, etc. So you want to continue building this throughout the year and making slight improvements where you can, and testing them and seeing which ones are getting better replies or converting more objections to meetings. And then this is where a lot of your meetings over email will get booked. Remember that the key input is responses. We tried to elicit that response by being as assumptive as possible. And all it takes sometimes is you just doubling down and selling the time, selling the meeting, And this is how you can pick off a lot of meetings by handling objections. So here's some other examples. You can pause if you want. They all follow the same general framework. Again, it's a framework. You can tweak these however you want, but we already handle this in-house. I'm not trying to debate why they should move it out of house. Instead, I'm saying appreciate the insight and totally understand. This is not about replacing what you're doing internally. It's just to properly introduce myself and make our resources available as new priorities arise or any additional support is ever needed. A brief 15-minute call would be greatly appreciated. Do you have availability this week? We don't have budget. Yada, yada, yada. This conversation isn't about budget or immediate purchasing decisions, so I'm not going to try and convince them that all of a sudden they should allocate budget to this over an email. It's more about getting introduced and making sure you have a point of contact when the timing's right. We're too busy at the moment. Please reach out closer to the end of the year. I'm not going to sell them on making this an immediate priority over an email. Instead, I totally understand you're busy, and that's why I'm looking to briefly introduce my team now. Even if there's no immediate fit, it makes sense to be aligned early so we're ready to support you when other priorities open up. So you can see the commonality in the framework here, but this is what I mean by doubling down and selling the time. And then if they respond back to that, that is when I can think about making a more targeted, detailed response. But frankly, at that point, it's probably just better to call them and get them on the phone. So getting towards the end here with a spicy topic, subject lines. I get asked about it so much. It's important, but I think a lot of people overthink it. So when it comes to subject lines, let me first tell you what to avoid. Trying too hard with your subject lines, because they almost always, one, take more time for you to come up with a clever subject line, which just decreases your efficiency. And two, they just make you sound salesy and actually backfire, even if the rest of your email was perfect. So what to avoid? Let's 10x your fleet efficiency. Connor, saw this and thought of you. Your competition is already doing this. You're getting your emails put into spam when you do this too. It's just avoid salesy, cheesy subject lines like this. I see them all the time. And it just makes me sad because you're putting all the rest of your, even if the email's great, you're not giving yourself a chance here. Subject lines that are totally fine, that work at scale. They may not be the absolute perfect subject line for every single prospect, but they get the job done and they work at scale and they get your emails opened. One can be their name, your name, introduction. That's it. Another could be your company, their company, intro, or their company, your company, intro. The orders doesn't really matter. If anything, I like to put their name or their company first, but introduction is a totally fine subject line, and it's actually about what your email's about. So you don't come across as salesy or scammy if you do that. It could be your company, their company, and some priority you know is going to likely land with them, like fleet tracking, depending on their persona, or it could just be intro, XYZ, their company's fleet team. But honestly, if you're not sure what to do, just use one of these first two. Either their name, your name, intro, or their company, your company, intro are totally fine subject lines, and you can optimize from there if you really want to. So the bottom line is just don't screw yourself over. Simple is better wherever possible. You shouldn't be spending time on the subject lines. It shouldn't be slowing you down. Don't try to win with the subject line. That's not where you win. You'll just sound salesy and manipulative once they actually get into the email. Clarity over cleverness. People open and read emails they understand, and they understand what an introduction is, and they'll be like, who should I be introduced to? And they're more likely to open than any of this stuff up here. So hope you all got value out of this. If you want far more in-depth how to actually create, build, and scale this system for yourself, you can check out the links in the pinned comment and description below to Cold Email Engine. I created the course from scratch. It is what I would have left myself if I was a new SDR again and my brain was totally wiped and I didn't know what I know now. It is a step-by-step hands-on guide. I also lead the live coaching in there. You can message me in the higher levels community, things like that. So hope to see you in there. And with that, hope you all also got a ton of value. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, all that, and I will see you all on the next one.